Chapter 9. See, said Melody excitedly, I told you it wasn't a coincidence. The Henry that Teeny was talking about was definitely my dad. A car horn beeped, and Nick and Melody looked up to see Roxanne Jenkins sailing by in a red SUV. Julia Jenkins and Teeny Nelson were buckled up next to each other in the back seat on their way home from ballet class. Melody waved, and Roxanne waved back. Maybe she's Honey, Nick suggested. I already put her name on the list, Melody told him. You remember the pound cake, right? When Melody was a little girl, Roxanne and her husband had split up. One day she had showed up on the bishop's doorstep with a homemade pound cake and a lot of eye makeup on. Later, Melody's father had explained that Roxanne had come on a fishing expedition. What's she trying to catch, Daddy? Melody had asked. Me, I suppose, he said. Do you want her to catch you? No, Melody's father had told her. I don't. I do, Melody had said, licking her lips. That pound cake was delicious. Now, Melody and Nick watched the red SUV turn the corner and disappear behind a row of hedges. Who else is on your list? Asked Nick. That woman Nancy I told you about who hugged my dad in the grocery store. And Miss Berg, the lady at the library who wears those funny red glasses? Asked Nick incredulously. Love is blind, Melody told him. Lucky for Miss Berg, he said. Can you think of anyone else we could add to the list? Asked Melody. What about my neighbor Bethany Mitchell? Said Nick. She's not married and there's definitely nothing wrong with the way she looks. She might look okay, but have you ever heard her talk? Melody asked. She says supposedly and anyways. Her father would never be interested in someone who spoke like that. I still think you should add her to the list, said Nick. Melody sighed. Fine, she's in the running. Maybe your dad met Honey on one of those dating websites. That's how my dad and Jenny got together. Nick's parents had gotten divorced when he and Melody were in second grade, and his dad had remarried a year later. Nick loved Jenny, and Melody thought she was great too, and not just because she made good chocolate chip cookies. I tried to talk my dad into doing online dating once, Melody told Nick. I even came up with a screen name for him, Word Nerd, but he refused to try it. Why do you think your dad hasn't told you he's seeing somebody? Asked Nick, flicking a crumb off of his knee. I don't know, but I'm sure he has a reason. He never does anything without thinking it through first. Nick stood up. Speaking of food, he said, I could use another sandwich. Who was speaking of food? Asked Melody. Oh, said Nick, I guess I was just thinking about it. Well, stop thinking about it, said Melody, grabbing Nick's hand and pulling him down the steps. We have detective work to do. It was about a 10-minute bike ride from the bishop's house to the beehive. As they pedaled past the high school, Melody happened to glance over at Nick and noticed he was chewing on his bottom lip. What's the matter? She asked. Nothing, he said. Hello, this is your best friend talking. You think I don't know what it means when you chew on your lip? What's wrong? It's just, well, I think I might have come up with a theory about why your dad doesn't want to tell you who he's been seeing, but I warn you, you're not going to like it. I promise not to shoot the messenger, Melody said. What does that mean? It means you should tell me your theory, and I won't blame you if I don't like it. Okay, said Nick, here goes. Maybe the reason your dad doesn't want you to know who he's seeing is because he's afraid you won't be happy about it. I've been wanting this for forever, said Melody. Why wouldn't I be happy about it? What if Honey is someone your dad knows you don't like? I mean, really, really, really don't like. Like who, for instance? Asked Melody. Nobody in particular, said Nick. It's just a theory. Melody shook her head. I don't buy it. If I don't like someone, he probably wouldn't like them either. Yeah, you're probably right. Like I said, it was just a theory. They had come to a steep hill, so they got off their bikes and started walking up them. Do you want to stay for dinner tonight? Melody asked. Sure, Nick said. You may regret that decision when you taste Grandpa's tuna noodle casserole. It's truly vile. I'm just glad to be here. I almost got grounded this weekend. Why? Asked Melody. Why do you think? Oh, because of the math test, Melody guessed. It wasn't our fault we got so many wrong, he said. Miss Hogan deliberately tried to trick us. I wish we could have had Miss McKenna again this year. I told my dad the exact same thing. Remember when Miss McKenna took us to the museum to see that dinosaur? Asked Nick. Melody nodded. Dracoryx hogswartia. She still had the picture of Nick and her posing in front of the skeleton with their arms draped around each other's shoulders. It was pinned to the bulletin board that hung above the desk in her room. That was the coolest thing ever, Nick said. No, Melody corrected. Mrs. McKenna was the coolest thing ever. My dad told me that she and Miss Hogan are friends. No way, shouted Nick. Miss Hogan is the opposite of Miss McKenna, said Melody. She doesn't think anything is funny. On the rare occasions when she actually smiles, she looks like she's in pain. And Miss Hogan definitely wouldn't have done something amazing like take the whole class to the Indianapolis Children's Museum to see a 60-million-old dinosaur named after something from Harry Potter. You can say that again, Nick agreed. As they glided around the corner side by side on their bikes, the beehive came into view. Holy moly, exclaimed Nick. Check out that big bee. But Melody wasn't looking at the bee. She was looking at a woman in a navy blue wraparound dress who was walking up the sidewalk in their direction. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but there was something very familiar about her. She had on a straw sun hat with a wide, floppy brim, so Melody wasn't able to see her whole face, but she could tell by the way the woman was pursing her lips that she was whistling, and as she got closer, Melody caught a snippet of the tune. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. Who is that? Melody asked Nick. They both watched as the woman in the straw hat crossed the street and headed up the front walk to the beehive. Just before she opened the door, she paused and took off her hat. Melody gasped. Speak of the devil, said Nick. It's Miss Hogan.